Hey Red Snake, Alex here. When was the last time you heard about Nazis today? It's a strange question, but when? If you're me as a Canadian, the last time you heard about a Nazi was probably the one invited to Parliament last year. That was a doozy. Him and many other cases around the world have had former Nazis found, and it's strange because the Allies had trials after the war to deal with them, right? Well, not really. Those trials only ever found 1,500 Nazis. And it begs the question, did the trials after World War II do anything? Well, before we determine whether the trials succeeded or not, we need to understand their purpose. The International Military Tribunal, or the Nuremberg Trials, took place in the Palace of Justice in Nuremberg, Germany. Its job was to punish Nazis, support global peace by showing accountability in war, and to denazify Germany. The trials had one judge from the United States, the USSR, Great Britain, and France. They were tried for war crimes, which is hurting civilians, crimes against humanity, which is extermination of a population, the Holocaust, and crimes against peace, starting the war. Japan had a very similar trial called the International Military Tribunal for the Far East, or Tokyo trials if you don't like a mouthful. The trials were held in Ishikaga, Tokyo, in the Ministry of War building. They were virtually identical in goals, but had small differences. First of all, the United States took a much bigger role in the Japanese trials. They tried to display themselves as a superpower, having more judges and having control of the entire prosecution team. It shows a superpower mentality that they would develop throughout the Cold War. There was also another key difference. They weren't charged for crimes against humanity, as the Japanese had not been suspected of any major genocide like the Germans had been. Extra fact, the Emperor of Japan, Emperor Hirohito, did not attend the Tokyo trials. The reasoning is unknown, as he might have just felt guilty and not wanted to experience more shame by seeing his fellow countrymen tried, or it was some other personal reason. Verdicts. Besides these two trials, there are many smaller trials that happened after these trials that found smaller members of both the Nazi and Japanese military and government. In total, about 1,500 Nazis were tried and 5,500 Japanese imperials were tried. In Germany, the initial Nuremberg trial had 24 Nazis tried and 7 Nazi organizations. About 19 were found guilty, 3 were not, and one prisoner named Hermann Goering killed himself before they were killed. The SS, SD, and Gestapo were found to be illegal organizations. These trials' evidence was mostly of the Holocaust, along with pictures and photos of devastated buildings across Europe, along with files and documents talking about the Holocaust. An interesting fact is that companies were often not tried for their involvement with the Nazi Party. Even CEOs got off with light prison sentences because they could claim that they were just working for the private market and being a good citizen and entrepreneur. It was very strange, but it worked as capitalism was legal for most of the nations that were judging them. In Japan, the Tokyo trials had about 28 defendants. 7 were executed, 16 got life imprisonment, and 2 got smaller sentences. 2 actually died during the trials, and 1 had a mental breakdown during the trial and then was released about a year later, free of anything. Hideki Tojo, the leader of fascist Japan, basically their Hitler, was executed. Another difference about these trials was that cooperation was a lot worse. It didn't go well together. About 8 out of the 11 judges only agreed on the final verdicts, meaning 3 abstained and did not agree with the final standings. Reactions and controversies. Most Germans were focused on survival due to the shattered economy, refugees, and destroyed country. They began dismissing it as victor's justice, as many still liked the Nazis. However, Germany began opening up to these trials and having their own in 1958 in Ulm, Germany, with the Ulm trial. The Jewish community had mixed reactions. Some Jewish people liked the representation of the Holocaust and its horrors and found it enough. However, many Jewish people found that they didn't represent the Holocaust enough and felt it was glossed over in favor of talking about the war instead. Also, only 3 Jewish subjects were brought to the Nuremberg trials as witnesses. They felt there should be more. The Japanese reaction was a lot more controversial. Many Japanese people found it to be victor's justice, as the trials were a lot less fair and more inconsistent with punishments. Many Japanese high officers would be punished for things their low officers did on their own, while many low officers were punished for what their high officers did that weren't even a part of. It made people really dislike the trial. However, despite these inconsistencies, the Murayama Statement of 1995, made by the Japanese Prime Minister, apologized for their actions in the war, showing how Japan has progressed as a society since then. Having a trial for war crimes was very weird at the time, as the only other time it was considered was for Kaiser Wilhelm II in World War I. However, they didn't actually do it. This trial, the Nuremberg trials and the Tokyo trials, served as an example for future trials, such as after the Rwandan genocide and after the Yugoslav wars in the 1990s. It also served as a founding act for parts of the United Nations War Crimes Commission, the Geneva Convention, the Genocide Convention, and the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. So, did it succeed in its goals? It did punish Nazis somewhat. It did denazify Germany and Japan, which I think is the most important. And did it support global peace? Not really, as the Cold War started right after this. So, overall, did it succeed? Somewhat. It depends your opinion, but I would say personally it did succeed. Okay, this is an outro. Canada has their own witch hunt for Nazis in the 1980s. Its purpose was to look for Nazi war criminals still living in Canada. It was called the Deschutes Commissions under Brian Mulroney. Another fun fact is that Prime Minister Mackenzie King visited the Nuremberg trials. That's it for my first video. See ya.